My mother's voice cut through the living room like a cold blade. Conversations froze. Forks hovered in mid-air. Even the candles on the cake seemed to flicker differently, as if they, too, sensed what was coming. I stood there with every pair of eyes on me, relatives, neighbors, a few people I barely recognized, all of them waiting, hungry for the spectacle. The birthday banner behind my mother sagged slightly, like it was embarrassed to be part of the scene. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew anything I said would only feed their satisfaction. My father sighed loudly, the theatrical kind he saved for moments when he wanted the room to agree that I was the problem. For once in your life, he said, not looking at me but at everyone else, try not to disappoint. A few people laughed. Not cruelly, worse. Politely. The kind of laugh people make when they don't want to take sides. My mother crossed her arms. Honestly, Mira. You had one responsibility. One. And even that was too much for you, wasn't it? I inhaled, slow and steady. The room smelled of vanilla cake and cheap perfume. My hands were shaking, but the rest of me was disturbingly calm, like a distant version of myself had taken over, observing instead of reacting. They didn't know that I had spent the entire day preparing exactly what they'd asked. They didn't know how much of myself I had poured into it. They didn't care to know. All they saw was an easy target who never fought back. My aunt whispered loudly enough for the front row to hear. She's always been like this. Weak. Too quiet for her own good. Something inside me shifted. A soft click. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity, sharp as glass. I looked at each of them, one by one, and the silence stretched until it felt heavy enough to bend the air. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I finally spoke. If this is what you think of me, then watch closely. They didn't understand what I meant. Not yet. What happened next would make sure they never forgot. For a moment, no one reacted. My words hovered in the air like smoke, thin, quiet, impossible to ignore. My mother blinked first. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded, her voice brittle with the kind of authority she thought she owned. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The power in the room had shifted, and she felt it before she understood it. I stepped back from the crowd, letting their confusion settle into unease. The living room was too warm, too crowded, too full of faces that had memorized the shape of my silence. Tonight, for the first time, I let them see something else. My father gave a stiff laugh. She's being dramatic. Mira, stop embarrassing yourself. Apologize and sit down. But his voice didn't land the way it usually did. It trembled, just slightly. A crack in the performance. I moved toward the hallway, slow and deliberate. Each step felt like shedding a layer of myself they had wrapped around me. The carpet, soft under my feet, seemed to pulse with every heartbeat I had swallowed for years. Behind me, chairs scraped. Whispers followed like smoke trailing a flame. Mira, where are you going? My mother hissed. Home, I said simply. This is your home. I paused at the doorway, my back still turned. The chandelier light painted a faint gold outline around the room, catching the faces of people who suddenly looked unsure, as if they were witnessing something they never believed I was capable of. Without turning around, I answered. No. It stopped being mine a long time ago. A stunned hush fell over the party. It was the first honest silence my family had ever given me. I walked out without looking back, past the birthday decorations, past the guests pretending not to stare, past the front door that had always felt more like a barrier than an exit. The night air hit me hard, cool, honest, and impossibly freeing. In that moment, standing alone in the dim porch light, I realized something that sent a slow, steady calm through my entire body. I wasn't running away. I was finally walking toward myself. But my family inside the house. They still had no idea what my silence had been protecting. The street was quiet when I stepped off the porch, the kind of quiet that feels purposeful, like the world is holding its breath for you. Behind me, the muffled sounds of the party sputtered back to life, forced laughter, clinking glasses, someone turning up the music too loud as if noise could erase what had happened. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking. The night smelled of rain even though the sky was clear. My steps echoed on the pavement, soft but certain, the sound of someone no longer trying to disappear into themselves. My fingers tingled with adrenaline, but beneath it was something steadier, heavier, almost unfamiliar. Peace. A fragile kind, but real. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. A message from my cousin Lena, the quiet one in the family, the only one who ever treated me like I was more than background scenery. "Are you okay?" Simple words, but they hit harder than any insult thrown at me tonight. I typed back, "I will be." Then added, after a breath, "Don't worry about me anymore." I knew she'd understand what I didn't say. A car drove by slowly, headlights brushing over me like a spotlight on someone who'd wandered off stage too early. Except I knew better now, I wasn't walking off stage. I was leaving the entire theater. Up ahead, a small neighborhood park sat empty. The swings swayed slightly in the breeze, chains clinking in a rhythm that sounded oddly patient. I sat on one of the benches, letting the cold metal press through my dress. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to think without interruption. No scolding voices. No judgment. No performance. Just me. And in the stillness, a thought surfaced, quiet, steady, impossible to ignore. If a family's love depends on your silence, it isn't love. It's possession. I exhaled, long and slow, letting the weight of that truth settle into my bones. The kind of truth that doesn't ask permission to change you. My phone buzzed again, but not from Lena this time. It was a name I hadn't seen in years. A message I never expected. And what it said would alter the course of everything that came next. The screen glowed in the dark, washing my hands in pale light. Alina. A name I hadn't allowed myself to say out loud for years. My old friend. My almost sister. The one who used to see me before I learned to make myself invisible. I hesitated before opening the message, as if doing so might reopen a door I'd quietly bricked over. Mira. I heard something happen tonight. If you need somewhere to land, I'm still here. I stared at the words, stunned by their gentleness. No questions. No assumptions. Just space, the one thing my family had never offered me. Before I could respond, another line appeared. I'm close by. Tell me if you want company. My first instinct was to decline. I'd spent so long keeping my world small that accepting help felt like cheating on the version of myself that had survived alone. But the truth was harsher, quieter, undeniable. I didn't want to be alone tonight. I typed slowly, feeling the weight of each letter. If you're free, come. She replied instantly. On my way. As I waited, the park around me settled into deeper silence. The swing chains barely moved now, as if even the wind was waiting to exhale. For a moment, I wondered how Alina even knew. Word traveled fast in families like mine, stories twisted, details exaggerated, blame always placed neatly on the person who didn't fight back. I imagined my mother's tight smile as she spun a new narrative, one where I was ungrateful, unpredictable, unwell. She'd be more concerned with controlling the story than understanding it. But tonight, the story wasn't hers to tell anymore. Headlights turned the corner, moving slowly, almost cautiously, until a familiar little silver car pulled up beside the park. The passenger window rolled down, and there she was, older, steadier, but with the same eyes that once knew every version of me. Mira, she said softly. No pity. Just recognition. Something inside me cracked, not painfully but cleanly, like a knot finally loosening. I stood, brushing off the dust, and walked toward her. Because what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that leaving that house tonight was only the beginning. And the real unraveling hadn't even started yet. The car door closed with a muted thud, sealing us in a quiet that felt strangely protective. Alina didn't start the engine right away. She just looked at me, really looked, the way people do when they're trying to assess invisible wounds. "You don't have to talk," she said gently. "Just breathe." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until the air left me in a shaky exhale. City lights spilled across the windshield, smearing into soft streaks as Alina finally pulled away from the curb. With each turn, the noise of my family's house faded, replaced by the low hum of the car and the steady rhythm of tires against asphalt. It was the calmest I'd felt in years. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't sharp or demanding, it simply let me exist. "What happened?" she asked eventually, her voice low, cautious, the way someone reaches into darkness not to disturb it, but to find your hand inside it. I shook my head. "Later," I whispered. "Just, not tonight." She nodded, accepting that boundary without question. That alone made my chest ache in ways I wasn't prepared for. We drove past rows of dim houses, windows glowing with other people's warmth. The kind I'd always watched from afar, wondering if peace was something ordinary people were simply born knowing how to keep. Alina's fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. "Your mom called me a few hours ago," she said, eyes still on the road. "She said you were acting difficult." She made air quotes around the words, her expression tightening. I didn't believe her. A familiar sting rose in my throat, not from her comment, but from the fact that someone finally didn't take my family's version of the truth as gospel. "I left before they could finish the performance," I murmured. "Good," she said softly, but there was steel underneath it. "You deserve better than being their designated scapegoat." The word deserve hit me harder than any insult thrown at me earlier. It felt foreign. Heavy. True. As we turned onto a quieter street, a thought surfaced, quiet but dangerous. Maybe leaving wasn't a moment. Maybe it was a beginning. And the strange part was, my family hadn't even realized what my absence would cost them. Alina's apartment was small, warm, and filled with the quiet kind of life I'd never known, soft lamps instead of harsh ceiling lights, mismatched blankets, books left open as if someone trusted the world enough to pause mid-sentence. The moment we stepped inside, she locked the door with a gentle click. "Not for fear. For safety." "Sit," she said, motioning to the couch. "I'll make tea." I sank into the cushions, my body finally noticing how exhausted it was. It felt strange, almost luxurious, to sit somewhere without bracing for criticism. The silence here wasn't waiting to be weaponized, it simply existed, letting me settle into it. Steam drifted from the mugs she placed on the table. She didn't push mine toward me. She just set it there, an offering, not an expectation. Minutes passed before she spoke again. "Mira, you didn't come here because of one bad night." Her tone wasn't accusing. It was understanding. The kind that slips under your guard because it already knows what hurts. I stared at my hands. They looked steady, but they carried years of swallowed words and quietly endured cruelty. "You're right," I admitted. Tonight wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time I stopped pretending it didn't hurt. Alina sat beside me, folding one leg beneath her. "They've been draining you for years," she said. "Every time your mother called, every favor they demanded, every time you apologized just to keep the peace." I saw it. Her voice softened. "I've been waiting for the day you'd finally choose yourself." Something in my chest loosened, like a thread pulled free from a knot. "But leaving doesn't solve everything," I said quietly. "They won't just let me go." "No," she agreed. "People like them never do. Not when they've built their comfort on someone else's self-erasure." I looked at her, surprised by the precision of her words. She met my gaze steadily. You think you walked out, she said. But they're the ones who just lost their foundation. They just don't know it yet. Her statement landed with a kind of truth that made the room feel different, heavier, charged, waiting. Because deep down, I already sensed it too. My absence wasn't an escape. It was an unraveling. And by the time they noticed the first thread pulling loose, it would already be too late. I woke the next morning in Alina's guest room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and something warmer, safety, maybe. For a moment, I just lay there, letting the quiet settle over me like a second blanket. Then my phone started buzzing. One call. Then another. Then another. I didn't need to look to know who it was. My family never noticed me until they lost access to something, my time, my labor, my silence. And now they were losing all three at once. I let the phone ring until it stopped. The room felt lighter every time I didn't answer. When I finally picked it up, there were 13 missed calls and a handful of messages. Where are you? This behavior is unacceptable. Come home immediately. You embarrassed us. Not a single message asked if I was safe. Not one acknowledged what they'd done. I set the phone face down on the blanket. The truth settled over me like a slow, inevitable tide. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about control. Alina knocked softly on the door before poking her head in. Hey. I made breakfast. Don't worry, it's the edible kind. Her smile was small but warm, the kind that didn't demand one in return. I figured they'd start blowing up your phone, she added, nodding toward the device. They have, I said. And are you okay? I took a breath. The real kind. The kind I'd forgotten how to take. Yes, I said slowly. For the first time in a long time, yes. She nodded as if she'd been expecting that answer. Good. Because once you stop answering them, they'll escalate. First guilt, then anger, then panic. It's a cycle. I swallowed. You really think they'll panic? She gave a low, humorless laugh. People who depend on your silence always panic when you finally learn how to speak. I didn't respond, but something inside me shifted, the same quiet click I'd felt last night. I wasn't afraid of their reaction anymore. What scared me was how long I'd lived inside their version of my life. And as I followed Alina toward the kitchen, I realized something that sent a chill down my spine. My family hadn't even reached the panic stage yet. That part was still coming, and it would reveal far more than I was ready for. The following days unfolded with a strange kind of stillness, not the tense quiet of my childhood home, but a breathable one. Alina gave me space when I needed it and company when the silence felt too big. I cooked small meals, walked around her neighborhood, relearned the softness of simply existing without being watched. But the quiet didn't last. On the third day, the messages changed. Not in frequency, in tone. You're being dramatic, Mira. Everyone is asking about you. You're making us look bad. How could you leave us with this mess? The word mess made something sharp twist inside me. I wasn't the one who made the mess, I had only stopped cleaning it up. By the fifth day, the calls came from different relatives. Aunts. Cousins. Even a neighbor who once pretended not to hear my mother yelling through the walls. Their messages were coded in artificial concern, their voices dripping with practiced disappointment. Your mother is very upset. Your father says he's ashamed. You need to grow up and apologize. Not once did anyone ask what they should apologize for. I stopped responding altogether. Every unanswered message felt like reclaiming a tiny piece of myself. Alina watched me delete another voicemail and said quietly, "They're unraveling." I didn't want to believe that. It felt too soon, too dramatic, the kind of thing that only happens in stories, not real life. But then my cousin Lena texted. Just one line. Things at home are getting weird. Call me when you can. My stomach tightened. I stepped onto Alina's balcony, phone in hand, the evening air cool against my skin. Lights from nearby apartments flickered gently, families settling into their own routines, none of which looked anything like the house I left behind. I called Lena. She answered on the first ring, whispering like she was hiding in a closet. Mira, she breathed, I need to tell you something, but you can't come back. Not yet. My pulse quickened. What happened? She hesitated, I could hear her weighing every word. Then she said it. And what she told me was only the beginning of how deeply my absence had started to expose everything they'd tried to bury. Lena's voice trembled, the kind of tremor someone gets when they're seeing truths they can't unsee. It started the night you walked out, she whispered. At first they acted like nothing happened. But you know how your mom gets when she's embarrassed. I did. Too well. She kept ranting to everyone, telling different versions of the story. In one version you overreacted. In another, you lost control. In another, she said you humiliated her intentionally. The lies didn't surprise me. What surprised me was Lena's next words. But people weren't buying it this time, Mira. I gripped the balcony railing. Why not? Because you weren't there to take the blame anymore, she said simply. Without you in the house, they've started turning on each other. A slow chill crept through my spine. What do you mean? Lena exhaled shakily. Your father snapped at her the next morning. Said she pushed you too far. She threw it back at him, said he always made things worse. They've been arguing non-stop since. I closed my eyes. Silence. Sharp, steady. They're fighting? I asked. They're unraveling, Lena corrected. Your mom hasn't slept. Your dad's been drinking in the garage. And your brother, he left yesterday. He said he's done being the replacement punching bag. My breath caught. My brother, the golden child, the one they never criticized, walked out? Lena didn't pause. And there's more, she whispered. Their finances. Mira, I think something's wrong. A pulse of heat shot through me. What happened? I overheard your parents talking. Something about overdue payments. About how you were supposed to handle part of the bills this month. I don't know the details, but I think they were depending on you more than you realized. I went still. For years, they'd kept me small, and yet quietly relied on me to hold everything together. My labor. My money. My emotional stability. All of it. And now the structure they built on my silence was collapsing under its own weight. Mira, Lena whispered, I'm scared they're going to call you back home just to clean up their mistakes. I swallowed, slow and steady. They won't, I said. How do you know? Because for the first time, the truth felt clear as a blade. They needed me far more than I ever needed them, and they were only now learning the cost of losing me. After the call ended, I stayed on the balcony for a long time, staring at nothing and everything at once, the glow of windows, the hum of distant traffic, the quiet pulse of a life that didn't revolve around my family's needs. For the first time, the chaos didn't pull me back. It didn't even tempt me. I was done being their emergency resource, their emotional sponge, their built-in scapegoat. Done folding myself into shapes that fit their stories. But the part that struck deepest wasn't their financial collapse. It was the realization that they always assumed I'd come running the moment things fell apart. They had raised me to be a reflex, not a person. I stepped back inside the apartment, the warmth wrapping around me like a quiet affirmation. Alina was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her expression softening when she saw me. You okay? She asked gently. I nodded, though the truth was more complicated. I think my leaving showed them something they weren't ready to see. That they can't function without you? That they never did, I whispered. She set her phone down. Mira, you held that house together for years. Not by shouting or demanding anything, but by absorbing everything they didn't want to deal with. When someone like you leaves, the entire system collapses. It's inevitable. Her words sank into me slowly, like ink bleeding through paper. A sudden buzz from my phone made me flinch. I glanced at the screen. A message from my father. We need to talk. Now. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just command. A second message followed, harsher. You're being selfish. Come home immediately. Alina watched my expression harden. Let me guess, she said, they're pretending nothing's their fault. I handed her the phone. See for yourself. She read the messages, jaw tightening. You know what that is, she said. Panic dressed as authority. I took the phone back, stared at the screen, and then, without hesitation, blocked the number. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't falter. It felt like cutting a cord that should have never been tied around me in the first place. Alina leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. You're stronger than you think, you know? Maybe I was. Maybe I was finally learning what strength looked like when it wasn't survival. But something in me knew this wasn't the final storm. Because people who lose their power don't disappear quietly. And my family was about to prove just how far they'd go to drag me back. 2 days passed before the knock came. Not a polite tap. Not the hesitant knock of someone unsure if they're welcome. No, this was the kind of pounding that carried entitlement in its bones. The kind that said, we still believe you belong to us. I froze mid-step. Alina, standing in the kitchen doorway, lifted her eyes toward the sound, her expression sharpening. Mira, she murmured, stay here. But I already knew the rhythm of that knock. I'd grown up with it. It was my mother, wielding her anger the way other people used doors. The pounding came again, louder this time. Mira. I know you're in there. Her voice filtered through the hallway like cold wind. Sharpened. Commanding. Uninvited. Alina reached the door first, placing herself firmly between me and whatever storm waited outside. She cracked it open just enough to see out. Can I help you? She asked, her tone neither friendly nor fearful. I'm here to see my daughter, my mother snapped. Move. Alina didn't. She doesn't want visitors. The silence that followed was so sharp I could almost hear my mother's pride splinter. I don't care what she wants, she said, voice rising. She owes us an explanation. That word, owes, burned through the apartment like smoke. Alina's reply was calm, steady, surgical. She doesn't owe you anything. My mother scoffed, shifting her weight like she was preparing for battle. Oh, please. You don't know what she's done. What she's put this family through. Alina opened the door a little wider, still blocking the threshold, and her voice dropped into something colder. I know enough. And I know she walked away for a reason. My mother's footsteps scraped angrily against the hall floor. This is ridiculous. Mira. Come out here right now. The command hit my nerves like an old bruise. But this time, it didn't sink in. I stepped forward into view. My mother's breath hitched when she saw me standing beside Alina, not timid, not small, not bending. Mira, she said, in that voice she used when she wanted obedience, pack your things. You're coming home. I studied her face, the forced confidence, the cracking edges, the fear hiding beneath the anger. And for the first time in my life, I spoke without flinching. No, I said softly. I'm not. Her eyes widened, disbelief shifting into fury. She opened her mouth to speak. But she had no idea that refusing her request was only the start. What I told her next would shatter whatever control she thought she still had. My mother's mouth hung open for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to see the truth behind her anger. It wasn't fury. It was fear. You're not, what? She demanded, voice tightening around each word. Don't be ridiculous. You're coming home. We're family, Mira. Her definition of family was the very thing I had escaped. I stepped forward, close enough for her to see the steadiness in my eyes. For years, she'd only seen me through a lens she controlled. Tonight, that lens cracked. I'm not coming home, I said calmly. Not now. Not later. Not ever, unless it's my choice. Her nostrils flared. You're being dramatic. No, I replied. I'm being honest. She blinked rapidly, caught off guard by the composure in my voice. My silence had always been their weapon. Tonight, my clarity was mine. You think you can just walk away from everything? She hissed. From your responsibilities? From the damage you caused? A hollow laugh escaped me. Quiet. Controlled. For the first time, she heard what disbelief sounded like when it came from me. What damage? I asked softly. The kind that comes from refusing to let myself be humiliated in front of an entire room? Or the kind that comes from not paying bills I didn't know existed because no one had the courage to admit they depended on me? Her face drained of color. Alina stood silent beside me, arms crossed, a solid presence, steady as stone. Mira, my mother stammered, you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly, I said. Lena told me enough. The moment her name left my lips, my mother's expression shattered into panic. You talked to Lena, she snapped. What did she say? She shouldn't have. That, I interrupted gently, is what you're worried about? Not the fact that you stood in a room full of people and tore me apart for entertainment? Her jaw trembled, the first real sign of consequence. You're twisting things, she whispered. No, I said. I'm finally seeing them clearly. The hallway went silent. A deep, echoing silence that felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. She reached for me, not with tenderness, but with desperation, and that single gesture told me everything. This wasn't about love. It was about losing control. And I let her hand hover there, suspended between us, before I stepped back. She froze. Her fingers curled into a shaking fist. Mira, she said, voice cracking, don't do this. But what she didn't know, what she'd never let herself believe, was that the choice had already been made. And the next words I spoke would end the story she'd been writing for my whole life, forever.